Captain Jake Martinez sat in his command chair aboard the Earth defense ship Horizon, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. The ship was on routine patrol along the outer edges of human space, checking for pirates or other threats. It was quiet work, but someone had to do it. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Communications Officer Lisa Chen from her station. She frowned at her console, adjusting dials and pressing buttons. "There's a signal coming from somewhere. Out there, but it's really weak." Jake turned his chair toward her. "What kind of signal?" "I'm not sure yet. It's not using any of the standard frequencies that the big alien races use. Actually, it's pretty crude. Most people would probably think it's just space noise." Lisa kept working on her equipment, trying to make the signal clearer. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Jake had been captain of the Horizon for 3 years now, and he trusted his crew completely. If Lisa said there was something worth looking at, then there probably was. "Can you clean it up?" Jake asked. "I'm trying, sir. Give me a few minutes." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. She had always been good with communications equipment, which was why Jake had requested her for his crew. Commander Alex Turner walked over from his station. He was Jake's second in command, and had been his friend since their academy days. "What's going on?" Lisa found something, a signal of some kind. Jake stood up and walked closer to the communications station. "How's it coming, Lisa?" "Getting somewhere. The signal is definitely artificial. Someone is broadcasting this on purpose." Lisa looked up from her work. "Captain, I think this might be a distress call." The bridge became even quieter. Distress calls were serious business in space. When someone was in trouble out in the vast emptiness between stars, there often wasn't time to wait for help. "Put it on speakers," Jake ordered. Lisa pressed a button, and a crackling, broken sound filled the bridge. It was clearly some kind of voice, but the words were in an alien language none of them recognized. The voice sounded desperate, scared, and very tired. "How long has this been broadcasting?" Alex asked. Lisa checked her readings. "Based on the signal degradation, I'd say at least 2 years, maybe longer, and it's getting weaker all the time." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Someone had been calling for help for 2 years and no one had answered. "Can you translate any of it?" "I'm running it through the computer now. The language database is checking for matches." Lisa waited as her computer worked. "Got something." "It's a species called the Kethfer. Computer says they're not part of the Galactic Council, but they've had contact with other alien races before." "What are they saying?" Jake asked. Lisa listened carefully as the computer provided a rough translation. Her face grew pale. "They're dying, Captain. Their whole world is dying, and they're begging anyone who can hear them to help. They say they've been sending this message to every spacefaring race they know about." The bridge crew exchanged worried looks. Everyone knew about the Galactic Council, the group of advanced alien races that controlled most of civilized space. Humans were new members, and many of the older races looked down on them as primitive and violent. If they've been broadcasting for 2 years, why hasn't anyone helped them? Alex wondered aloud. Before anyone could answer, the bridge doors opened and Velthor walked in. He was the ship's galactic liaison officer, a tall, thin alien from a race called the Zephyrians. His job was to make sure humans followed galactic law and didn't embarrass themselves. "Captain Martinez," Velthor said in his precise, cold voice, "I have detected that you are receiving unauthorized communications from an unregistered source. This violates galactic communication protocols." Jake turned to face the alien. "It's a distress call, Velthor. Someone needs help. The transmission you referred to has been classified by the Galactic Council as primitive interference from an unworthy species," Velthor replied. "The Kethfer are not recognized as a legitimate civilization. Their crude technology and desperate behavior make them unsuitable for contact with advanced races." "Unsuitable?" Alex stepped forward, anger in his voice. "They're dying and asking for help." "How is that unsuitable?" Velthor's large eyes looked at Alex with something like pity. "This is exactly the kind of emotional response that makes other races question humanity's readiness for galactic citizenship. Advanced civilizations do not waste resources on inferior species that cannot maintain themselves." Jake felt his own anger rising, but he kept his voice calm. Have other races received this signal? Of course. The Alterons, Nexari, and my own. People have all been aware of these transmissions for some time. We've all agreed that responding would set a dangerous precedent. If we answer every cry for help from primitive worlds, we would have no time for more important matters. Lisa looked up from her station, her face showing disgust. Captain, I'm getting more of the translation. They're not just asking for rescue. They're offering to share their knowledge in return for help. Apparently, they're experts in something called agricultural biotechnology. C. Velthor said, they attempt to bribe their betters with worthless primitive science. This only proves they are not worthy of assistance. Jake stared at the alien for a long moment. He thought about his own species' history, about all. The times humans had been called primitive or savage by others. He thought about the scared, desperate voice they had just heard, calling out into the darkness for 2 years with no answer. Lisa, can you determine the location of the signal? He asked. Already working on it, Captain. Give me a few more minutes.
Arthur
Stepped closer to Jake. Captain, I strongly advise against whatever you are considering. Humanity is already viewed with suspicion by many council races. You are seen as violent, unpredictable, and overly emotional. If you engage in unauthorized contact with an unrecognized species, it will only confirm these opinions. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Alex said quietly. Jake made his decision. It wasn't a hard choice, really. He had joined the Earth Defense. Forced to protect people, and that didn't just mean humans. Lisa, how long until you have those coordinates? 2 minutes, Captain. Velthar, I want you to understand something, Jake said, turning to face the alien liaison. I don't care what the Galactic Council thinks about this. I don't care if they think we're primitive or savage or whatever else they want to call us. Someone is dying out there, and they asked for help. We're going to give it to them. This is most unwise, Captain Martinez. The consequences are my responsibility, Jake interrupted. Lisa, as soon as you have those coordinates, plot us a course. Maximum speed. Lisa replied with a smile. Velthor's salient features showed something that might have been frustration. You are making a grave error. This action will be reported to the Council. Your reckless behavior will reflect poorly on all humanity. Jake walked back to his command chair and sat down. And maybe it's time the Council learned something about humanity that they don't seem to understand yet? What is that? Velthor asked. That sometimes being savage means having the courage to do what civilized people won't. Lisa called out from her station. Coordinates locked in, Captain. Signal is coming from a system about 6 days away at maximum speed. Take us there, Lisa, and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're responding to a distress call. As the Horizon changed course and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Jake wondered what they would find when they reached the Kethver homeworld. Whatever it was, he knew they were doing the right thing. Behind him, Velthor stood silently already, composing his report to the Galactic Council about humanity's latest act of primitive behavior. 6 days later, the Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kethver system. What they found there made the entire bridge crew fall silent. My God, whispered Science Officer Danny Rodriguez from his station. His instruments were going wild with readings he had never seen before. Captain, you need to see this. Jake stood up from his command chair and walked over to Danny's console. The main screen showed 2 massive stars locked in a deadly dance, spiraling closer and closer to each other. Between them was a small, dark planet that looked like it was being torn apart. The system is collapsing, Danny explained, his voice shaking slightly. Those 2 stars are going to collide eventually, maybe in a few months. The gravitational forces are already destroying everything else in the system, including the planet. Alex asked from his position next to the captain, especially the planet. Look at these readings. Danny pointed to his screen. The surface is cracking apart. There are massive earthquakes every few hours. Atmosphere is being stripped away by the stellar winds. Lisa Chen called out from her communications station. Captain, I'm picking up the distress signal much stronger now. And there are other signals, too. I think there are still people alive down there. Jake felt his heart sink. They had traveled 6 days to find a world that was dying with people trapped on it. How much time do they have? Danny worked at his console, running calculations. To say exactly, but based on the rate of destruction, it'd be 6 weeks before the planet becomes completely uninhabitable. Could be less. Can we get down to the surface? Jake asked. The ship's shields can handle the radiation and debris for a short time, Danny replied. But it's not safe for extended operations. Velthar, who had been standing quietly in the corner of the bridge since they arrived, finally spoke up. Now, you see why the Galactic Council classified this as a lost cause? The Kethfer chose to build their civilization in an unstable system. Their lack of foresight does not make them worthy of rescue. Jake turned to stare at the alien. You're going to die, Velthor. All of them. That is the natural order. Species that make poor choices face extinction. This is how evolution works on a galactic scale. That's not evolution. That's just cruelty, Alex said, his voice filled with disgust. Captain Lisa interrupted. I'm getting a response to our communications. Someone on the surface is trying to talk to us. Put it through, Jake ordered. The main screen flickered. Suddenly they were looking at an alien face unlike any they had seen before. The Kethfer had large, gentle eyes and features that seemed both wise and tired. The alien was old, with what looked like scars on his face, and he was clearly struggling to keep his emotions under control. Please, the alien said in broken but understandable human language, please tell us you are real. We have waited so long. Are you here to help us? Jake stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. I'm Captain Jake Martinez of the Earthship Horizon.
Ow.
We received your distress call. We're here to help.
Oh.
Alien's large eyes filled with what could only be tears. You ... you actually came. After all this time, someone actually came. He seemed to collapse slightly, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. What's your name? Jake asked gently. I am Elder Morthok, leader of what remains of my people. We are the Kethfer, and we are dying. The alien's voice was filled with sadness, but also with hope. We have been calling for help for more than 2 of your years. We sent our message to every spacefaring race we knew about. How many of you are left? Jake asked. About 200,000 souls. We have moved underground to escape the worst of the destruction, but our shelters will not hold much longer. Morthok paused, seeming to gather his strength. May I ask?
Us.
What race are you? We do not recognize your species. We're humans from Earth. Morthok's expression showed confusion. Humans? I do not know this name. You are not on our list. Of spacefaring civilizations? Jake exchanged glances with Alex. We're relatively new to space travel.
We've only been part of the galactic community for about 10 years. Then how did you receive our message? The other races told us that new
Species are not given access to long-range communications. Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest. What other races? The Alterans were our protectors for many generations. When our scientists first detected that our stars were becoming unstable, we asked them for help. They said they would evacuate us to a safe world. Morthok's voice became bitter. But when the time came, they said the cost was too high. They said we were not genetically advanced enough to be worth saving. What about the others? Alex asked. Did you contact other races?
Yes.
The Zephyrian said we were too primitive. To deserve their attention, the Nexari said that helping us would interfere with natural selection. The Voltari said our technology was too crude to be useful. Every race we contacted had a reason why they could not help us. Velthar shifted. Uncomfortably, but said nothing. But you came, Morthok continued, his voice filled with wonder. You strange humans from a world we'd never heard of. You actually came. Jake made a decision. Elder Morthok, we're going to get you and your people off that planet. All of you, Captain. Danny interrupted quietly. Our ship can only carry about 3,000 people. Even if we packed them in like cargo, we couldn't take everyone. Morthok seemed to understand. We know you cannot save us all. We accept this. Perhaps you could take our children, our young ones who might continue our race somewhere else. Jake said firmly, we're not leaving anyone behind. We'll find a way. Chief Medical Officer Amy Foster stepped forward. She had been listening to the conversation with growing determination. Captain, I'd like permission to take a landing party. Down to the surface, We need to assess the situation firsthand. The surface is extremely dangerous, Danny warned. The atmosphere is barely breathable, and there are constant seismic events. Then we better get started, Amy replied. If we're going to save 200,000 people, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Jake nodded. Proved. Take a small team and gather as much information as you can, but be careful down there. Elder Morthok, Jake said, turning back to the screen. We're sending a team down to meet with you. Can you provide safe landing coordinates? Yes, of course. We've prepared a landing area near our main shelter. But please, be careful. Our world is not what it once was. After the communication ended, Belthar approached Jake. Captain, this is madness. You cannot possibly evacuate 200,000 beings with one ship. And even if you could, where would you take them? They are not Galactic Council citizens. They have no legal right to settle on any civilized world. Then we'll take them to an uncivilized world, Jake replied. Maybe they'll fit in better with savages like us. 2 hours later, Amy Foster led a landing party down to the surface of the dying planet. What they found there changed everything they thought they knew about civilization. The underground shelters were not crude caves, but beautiful. Spaces filled with art and music, despite the desperate circumstances. The Kethfer had maintained their culture and dignity even as their world fell apart around them. Amy met with Elder Morthok in person and was amazed by what she learned. The Kethfer were not primitive at all. They were scientists, artists, philosophers, and engineers. Their agricultural techniques were so advanced that they could grow food in conditions that would kill most plants. Your people are remarkable, Amy told Morthok as they walked through one of the underground gardens. Even facing extinction, the Kethver had managed to create beauty. We were once a proud race, Morthok replied sadly. Our cities were beautiful. Our science was advanced, our art was renowned, but none of that mattered to the council races. They saw only that we were not as technologically powerful as them. The Alterons really abandoned you? Amy asked. They said it would cost too much to evacuate us. They said the resources would be better spent on more advanced species. Morthok stopped walking and turned to face Amy. But you humans came. Why? What makes you different? Amy thought about the question for a moment. I don't know if we're different. Maybe we just haven't learned yet that some people aren't worth saving. Or maybe, Morthok said quietly, you understand something the others have forgotten. When Amy returned to the horizon, she brought with her detailed information about the Kethver situation. But she also brought something else, absolute. Certainty that these people deserved to be saved, no matter what it cost. Back aboard the horizon, Jake gathered his senior officers in the main briefing room. Amy Foster had just finished giving her report about the surface conditions, and the numbers were not encouraging. 200,000 people, Alex said, shaking his head, and we have maybe 6 weeks before the planet becomes completely uninhabitable. Less than that, Danny added grimly. Seismic activities getting worse every day. Some of their underground shelters are already starting to collapse. Jake stared at the data on the table in front of him. The horizon could carry 3,000 people if they packed them in tight and stripped out non-essential equipment. Even if they made multiple trips, there wasn't enough time. What about calling for backup? Amy suggested. Other Earth ships could help. The nearest Earth fleet is 3 weeks away, Alex replied. By the time they got here and we organized a proper evacuation, it would be too late. Engineer Nick Parker had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke up. Captain, I might have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work. Jake looked at his chief engineer. Nick was a practical man who rarely suggested anything that wasn't well thought out. What are you thinking? Strip the horizon down to bare essentials. Remove everything we don't absolutely need for life support and engines. The crew quarters, recreation areas, most of the cargo bays, even some of the weapon systems. Could probably fit 10,000 people in here if we really tried. That still leaves us short by 190,000, Alex pointed out. Nick nodded. That's where the crazy part comes in. The Kethver have mining equipment, right? It's big machines designed to hollow out asteroids in underground spaces. Yes, Amy confirmed. Elder Morthok showed me some of their mining operations. They're actually quite advanced. What if we use their equipment to hollow out some of the larger asteroids in this system? We don't need them to be pretty or comfortable, just airtight and able to support life for a few weeks. Danny leaned forward, interested despite himself. The asteroids could work as refugee transports. We'd need to install basic life support systems, but the Kethfer might have the equipment to do that. Gosh, it would be incredibly dangerous, Alex warned. Those asteroid ships would be barely held together. A mistake and hundreds of people could die. They're going to die anyway if we don't try, Jake said quietly. Nick, how long would it take to set up something like this? If we work around the clock and get the Kethfer to help, maybe for weeks. 5 at the outside. Nick paused. But, Captain, there's another problem. Even if we get everyone off the planet, where do we take them? Like Velthor said, they're not Galactic Council citizens. No civilized world will accept them. Jake had been thinking about that problem too. We take them to human space. There are several uninhabited worlds that could support their kind of agriculture. We'll make them citizens of Earth if we have to. Velthor, who had been listening silently from the corner of the room, finally spoke. Captain Martinez, this plan is not only dangerous, it is illegal. You cannot simply declare aliens to be Earth citizens. The Galactic Council has strict rules about refugee resettlement, and maybe it's time someone broke those rules, Jake replied. You do not understand the consequences, Velthar continued, his voice becoming more urgent. If you proceed with this unauthorized rescue, you will be violating at least 17 different galactic laws. Earth's membership in the Council could be suspended. Your entire species could be banned from civilized space. Civilized space? Amy stood up, her face flushed with anger. What's civilized about letting 200,000 people die when you have the power to save them? The Galactic Council has maintained peace and order for over 10,000 years by following rational policies, Velthar explained coldly. If every species began rescuing every other species that faced extinction, there would be chaos. Resources would be wasted. Advanced civilizations would collapse under the burden of supporting primitive ones. Or maybe, Alex said slowly, advanced civilizations would learn something about what advancement actually means. Jake made his decision. We're doing this. Nick, start planning the modifications to the ship. Amy, coordinate with Elder Morthok. About the asteroid mining. Danny, I want you to find the best asteroids for conversion. Alex, help Nick with the ship modifications. What about the Galactic Council? Velthor asked. They will not allow this to proceed. Are you going to report us? Jake asked, looking directly at the alien. Velthor was quiet for a long moment. My duty requires me to inform the Council of any violations of galactic law. Then do your duty, Jake said simply. But we're doing ours too. 3 days later, the horizon was swarming with activity. Human crew members worked alongside Kethfer engineers to strip out everything non-essential from the ship. The crew quarters were removed completely, placed with simple sleeping areas that could hold 3 times as many people. On the surface of the dying planet, massive mining machines worked around the clock to hollow out selected asteroids. The Kethfer were amazingly good at this kind of work. They had been mining their asteroid belt for generations, and they knew exactly how to create safe, stable hollow spaces. Elder Morthok personally supervised much of the work. Despite his age, he worked alongside the younger Kethfer, helping to install life support systems in the makeshift refugee ships. Jake found him one day working on installing air recyclers in what would soon be a transport for 5,000 of his people. Elder Morthok, Jake said, you should be resting. Let the younger ones handle the heavy work. The old Kethfer looked up from his work, his large eyes bright with determination. Captain Martinez, for 2 years we have waited in despair, believing that we would all die, forgotten and alone. Now we have hope again. I will not rest while there is work to be done. Your people are remarkable, Jake said. Watching a group of young Kethfer installing emergency equipment with practiced efficiency, the council races don't know what they missed. Perhaps that is for the best, Morthok replied sadly. We have learned that sometimes it is better to be overlooked by those who call themselves advanced. Their conversation was interrupted by Lisa Chen's voice over the ship's communication system. Captain Martinez, please report to the bridge immediately. We have incoming ships. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had been expecting this, but he had hoped they would have more time. Elder Morthok, continue the work. Don't stop for anything. When Jake reached the bridge, he found his crew staring at the main screen in shock. 3 massive ships hung in space near the edge of the system. They were elegant, powerful vessels that made the horizon look like a tiny insect by comparison. Galactic Council forces, Danny reported, his voice tight with worry. Nixari battle group, led by Admiral Zarthik himself. They're hailing us, Lisa announced. Put them through, Jake ordered. The main screen filled with the image of Admiral Zarthik, a tall, imposing alien with features that seemed carved from stone. His eyes were cold and completely without emotion. Captain Martinez of the vessel Horizon, the Admiral said, in a voice like grinding metal, you are hereby ordered to cease all unauthorized activities in this system and return to human space immediately. We're conducting a humanitarian rescue operation, Jake replied, keeping his voice steady. You are violating galactic preservation protocol, Zarthik continued as if Jake hadn't spoken. The natural extinction of primitive species must not be interfered with. This is fundamental galactic law. These people aren't primitive, Jake said. They're dying because their star system is collapsing, not because they did anything wrong. Their inability to prevent or escape this catastrophe proves their inadequacy, the Admiral replied coldly. Advanced species do not find themselves in such situations. Advanced species help each other, Lex said loudly from his position beside Jake. Admiral Zarthik's expression didn't change. Captain Martinez, you have 1 hour to abandon this illegal rescue operation and depart this system. If you refuse, we will be forced to ensure compliance through other means. Are you threatening us? Jake asked. I am maintaining galactic order, Zarthik replied. The choice is yours, Captain. Leave now, or be removed. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Captain, Danny said quietly, their lead ship has enough firepower to destroy us in seconds. Jake looked around at his crew. Every face showed the same thing, fear, but also determination. They all knew what was at stake. Continue the evacuation, Jake ordered. We're not abandoning these people. But Sir Alex said, how can we fight 3 Council warships? Jake smiled grimly. We're not going to fight them. We're going to show them what civilization really looks like. The hour passed quickly. On the surface of the dying planet, the evacuation continued at a frantic pace. The first asteroid ship was almost ready, with life support systems installed and tested. Elder Morthok had organized his people into groups, with the youngest and oldest scheduled to leave first. Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon.
Oh.
Watching the Council ships on his screen, they hadn't moved closer, but their weapons were clearly powered up and ready. 3 massive warships against 1 small Earth destroyer. It should have been no contest. Captain Lisa called out from her communications station, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors. Multiple ships approaching from the direction of human space. Danny quickly checked his instruments. Confirmed. I count at least 15 ships, maybe more. They're still too far away to identify, but they're coming fast. Jake felt a surge of hope, followed immediately by worry. He had sent a message to Earth Command before they started the rescue, but he hadn't expected this kind of response. Aim. Until they arrive? About 2 hours at their current speed, Danny replied. That might be too late. Admiral Zarthik had given them 1 hour, and that time was almost up. Admiral Zarthik is hailing us again, Lisa announced. Put him through, Jake ordered. The alien admiral appeared on screen, his expression even colder than before.
Captain?
Martinez, your time has expired. You'll cease this illegal activity immediately and surrender your ship for inspection. We're not stopping, Jake said firmly. These people need our help, and we're going to give it to them. Then you have chosen to resist lawful authority, Zarthik replied. We will disable your ship and remove you from this system by force. The communication ended. On the main screen, Jake watched as the 3 Council ships began moving toward them. Their weapons systems glowed with deadly energy. All hands, battle stations, Jake announced over the ship's intercom. This is not a drill. The bridge crew moved quickly to their positions. Weapons Officer Kelly Brooks powered up the Horizon's defensive systems. Though everyone knew they were hopelessly outgunned, Captain Kelly reported, their lead ship is targeting our engines. They're trying to disable us, not destroy us.
They
Want to take us alive? Alex observed. Probably to put us on trial for violating galactic law. Sir, called out pilot Tony Garcia from his station. The first asteroid ship is launching from the planet's surface. Elder Morthok is aboard with about 4,000 of his people. Jake made a decision that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. Tony, put us between the council ships and that asteroid transport. We're going to shield the evacuation, Captain. That puts us directly in their line of fire, Alex warned. I know, Jake replied calmly. The Horizon moved to intercept the council ships. It was like a tiny fish swimming toward 3 massive sharks, but Jake's crew didn't hesitate. They knew what they were fighting for. Incoming fire, Kelly announced. They're targeting our weapon systems. The ship shook as energy beams struck their shields. The Horizon's defenses held, but barely. Another hit like that would cripple them. Return fire, Jake ordered. Target their weapon systems only. We're trying to disable them, not kill them. Kelly worked her controls with precise skill. The Horizon's much smaller weapons lanced out toward the nearest council ship. The beams struck the alien vessel's weapon arrays, causing several of them to go dark. Good shooting, Kelly, Jake said. Keep it up. But even as he spoke, the other 2 council ships opened fire. The Horizon shook violently as multiple energy beams struck their shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems began to overload. Shields down to 60%, Danny reported. We can't take much more of this. On the main screen, Jake could see the asteroid ship moving slowly away from the planet. It was crude and ungainly, but it was carrying 4,000 Kethver to safety. Behind it, 2 more asteroid ships were launching from the surface. Sir, Tony called out, the council ships are trying to get around us. They want to target the transports directly. Jake's blood ran cold. If the council forces destroyed the asteroid ships, thousands of innocent people would die. Don't let them through, Tony. Whatever it takes. Tony Garcia was one of the best pilots in the Earth fleet, and he proved it now. The Horizon danced through space, using its superior speed and maneuverability to stay between the massive council ships and the fleeing transports. When the aliens tried to go around, Tony was there. They tried to push through. The Horizon blocked their path. But the small Earth ship was taking tremendous damage. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the lights flickered as power systems struggled to keep up. Captain Kelly called out, I'm reading massive energy buildup in their main weapons. They're preparing to fire everything they have. Jake realized what was happening. Admiral Zarthik had decided that if he couldn't capture the humans, he would destroy them as an example to others who might challenge galactic law. All hands brace for impact, Jake announced. The 3 council ships fired simultaneously. Dozens of energy beams converged on the Horizon from multiple directions. There was no way to avoid them all, but the beams never reached their target at the last second. A new ship appeared directly in front of the Horizon. It was another Earth destroyer, identical to Jake's ship. The newcomer took the full force of the council attack, its shields flaring brilliant white as they absorbed the devastating energy. This is Captain Pete Richardson of the Earth ship Liberty, came a familiar voice over the communications system. Sorry we're late to the party, Jake. More ships appeared around them. Earth destroyers, cruisers, even civilian freighters and passenger ships. Within minutes, the council forces found themselves facing not one small human ship, but an entire fleet. Jake, came another voice, this one belonging to Captain Linda Walsh of the heavy cruiser Independence. We got your message about needing some help with a rescue operation. Hope you don't mind, but we brought some friends. On his screen, Jake could see dozens of human ships taking positions around the asteroid transports. Freighters moved in close to provide additional shielding. While the warships formed a protective screen, Admiral Zarthik appeared on screen again. But this time his expression showed surprise instead of cold certainty. Human vessels, you are interfering with a lawful council operation, withdraw immediately, or face the consequences. Captain Richardson answered for all of them. Admiral, we're conducting a humanitarian rescue mission. We suggest you withdraw and let us finish our work. You cannot protect these primitives forever, Zarthik said angrily. The Council will not allow this violation of galactic law to stand. Then maybe it's time the Council learned something new. Captain Walsh replied calmly. For several tense minutes, the two fleets faced each other in space. The Council ships were more powerful individually, but the humans had them outnumbered. More importantly, the humans were fighting for something they believed in, while the Council forces were simply following orders. On the planet's surface, the evacuation continued. More asteroid ships launched, each one carrying thousands of Kethver. To safety, the human fleet moved to protect each transport as it cleared the planet's atmosphere. Marine Sergeant Roy Baker led teams down to the surface to help with the final evacuations. His soldiers worked alongside Kethver civilians, carrying the elderly and wounded to the waiting transports. When some of the underground shelters began to collapse, Roy's Marines went in anyway, refusing to leave anyone behind. Sergeant Baker, Elder Morthok said as Roy helped load the last group of children onto a transport, "Why do your people risk so much for strangers?" Roy looked at the old alien for a moment, then at the scared but hopeful faces of the Kethver. "Children, because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. Back in space, Admiral Zarthik made his final decision. Rather than start a war that might spread throughout the galaxy, he ordered his ships to withdraw. But his parting message was clear. This matter is not finished, humans. The Council will remember this day. As the Council ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Jake allowed himself to breathe again. Around him, his bridge crew was cheering and hugging each other. They had done it. Ush. Against impossible odds, they had saved the Kethver. "Captain," Lisa called out, "I'm getting a message from the surface. Elder Morthok wants to speak with you." Nodded, put him through. The old Kethver appeared on screen, tears streaming down his face. Behind him, Jake could see the last groups of his people boarding the final transport. "Captain Martinez," Morthok said, his voice breaking with emotion, "how can we ever thank you? You have saved not just our lives, but our entire civilization." "You don't need to thank us," Jake replied. "We just did what anyone should do when someone asks for help." "Not anyone," Morthok said quietly. "Only you humans. Only the ones the galaxy calls savage." 6 months after the rescue at Kethmer, Jake Martinez stood in the main hall of the new Kethmer settlement on Eden Prime. The planet was located in human space. Far from the Galactic Council's influence, what had once been empty grasslands was now becoming a thriving community. The transformation was remarkable. The Kethver had taken their advanced agricultural knowledge and applied it to their new home. Fields of crops stretched to the horizon, growing faster and healthier than anything human farmers had ever achieved. The aliens had also begun teaching their techniques to human settlers, creating a partnership that benefited everyone. Elder Morthok approached Jake, moving more easily than he had during those desperate days on the dying planet. The old Kethver looked younger somehow, as if hope had given him new strength. "Captain Martinez," Morthok said warmly, "or should I say Admiral Martinez now? I heard about your promotion." Jake smiled. "Just Jake is fine, Elder. How are your people settling?" "Better than we ever dared to hope," Morthok replied. "Our children are laughing again. Our artists are creating new works. Our scientists are working on projects they thought they would never complete. You have given us more than life, Admiral. You have given us a future." "You've earned it," Jake said. "And you've given us something valuable, too. Our food production has increased by 30% since your people started sharing their techniques." "It is the least we can do," Morthok said. "But there is something else I wanted to discuss with you. We have been receiving messages." "What kind of messages?" "Other species? Dozens of them. Races that were dismissed by the Galactic Council as primitive or unworthy. They have heard what happened at Kethmer, and they want to make contact with humanity." Jake nodded. This wasn't entirely surprising. Word of the rescue had spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. "What are they asking for?" Trade partnerships, mostly. Some want to join your growing alliance. Others simply want to know that. Someone will listen if they call for help. Morthok paused. The galaxy is changing, Admiral. The old order is being questioned. Jake looked out through the hall's large windows at the bustling settlement outside. Humans and Kethfer worked together in the fields and workshops. Children from both species played together in the streets. It was a scene of cooperation and hope that the Galactic Council claimed was impossible. Elder Jake said, "There's something I want you to see." 3 hours later, Jake and Morthok stood in the main assembly hall of the orbital station above Eden Prime. Representatives from 47 different species filled the chamber. Some Jake recognized from intelligence reports as former client races of the major galactic powers. Others were completely unknown to human records. At the front of the chamber stood Captain Linda Walsh, now Admiral Walsh, who had been chosen to lead this historic gathering. She looked out at the diverse crowd with satisfaction. "Friends," Admiral Walsh began, "we are here today to establish something new in our galaxy. For too long, the powerful have ignored the needs of others. For too long, advanced civilizations have turned their backs on those they consider beneath them. Today we change that." The chamber erupted in cheers and applause from dozens of different species. Jake noticed that even some of the translators were having trouble keeping up with all the different languages being spoken. "We are here to form the Galactic Mutual Aid Compact," Admiral Walsh continued. "An alliance based on the simple principle that when someone calls for help, someone should answer." A delegate from the Hamendi, a small reptilian species, stood up. "Admiral Walsh, what guarantee do we have that humanity will not become like the Council races? How do we know you will not abandon us when it becomes inconvenient to help?" Admiral Walsh gestured toward Jake and Elder Morthok, "because we've already proven what we're willing to risk for strangers." Admiral Martinez and his crew faced down. 3 Council warships to save people they had never met. That's not the action of a species that abandons its friends. Another delegate, this one from the insect-like Vorthok, clicked and buzzed a question that the translator rendered as, "What? About the Galactic Council? They will not allow this challenge to their authority." Jake stepped forward to answer. "The Council is already facing challenges from within. We've received reports of protests on Zephyrian worlds. Young Alterans are questioning their governments' policies. Even some Nexari are starting to ask why their resources go to military expansion instead of helping others." This was true. The rescue at Kethmer had inspired more than just the species that were being ignored. It had also reached some members of the supposedly advanced races who were tired of their government's cold indifference to suffering. "The old order is cracking," Jake continued, "and we're offering an alternative." The vote to establish the compact was unanimous. 47 species committed to a new way of doing things in the galaxy. They would share resources, knowledge, and most importantly, they would answer when others called for help. 3 weeks later, Jake received a priority message while he was inspecting the new shipyards that were being built in the Eden system. The message came from Captain Pete Richardson, who was now patrolling the outer edges of the growing Alliance territory. Admiral Pete's voice came through the communication system. "We've got a situation out here. I'm receiving a distress call from an unknown species. Signal is weak, but they sound desperate." Jake smiled. This was exactly what the compact had been created for. "Coordinates, Pete. Sending them now." "It's about 4 days from your position. We're on our way," Jake replied. Then he opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. "All available ships. We have a rescue mission. Form up and prepare for jump to faster than light." Within hours, a fleet of 30 ships from 12 different species was moving toward the distress call. The fleet included not just human vessels, but also Kethfer. Agricultural ships, Hamendi medical vessels, and Vorthok engineering craft. Each species contributed what they did best. When they arrived at the coordinates, they found a situation similar to what Jake had encountered at Kethmer. A species called the Dalit was trapped on a planet that was being consumed by volcanic activity. Their crude distress call had been broadcasting for months. It's ignored by every major galactic power, but this time, the rescue went smoothly. The compact fleet had experience, resources, and most importantly, the will to help. Within 2 weeks, every Dalit had been evacuated to safety. The grateful aliens became the 48th member of the growing alliance, as Jake watched the last Dala transport cleared the dangerous planet. He received an unexpected communication. The face that appeared on his screen was one he recognized, Velthor, the former galactic liaison officer who had once served aboard the Horizon. Admiral Martinez, the Zephyrian said, and Jake was surprised to hear something like respect in his voice. I wanted to inform you that I have resigned my position with the Galactic Council, Velthor. Jake was genuinely surprised. Why? Because I have seen what you humans call civilization, and I have compared it to what my people call advancement. I know which one I prefer. Velthor paused. I am requesting permission to join your compact as a refugee from my own government's policies. Jake didn't hesitate. Permission granted. Welcome to the team, Velthor. 6 months after that, Elder Morthok stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Galactic Assembly Hall was packed with representatives from over 200 species. The compact now included not just the formerly ignored races, but also growing numbers of individuals from the major powers who had grown tired of their government's cold policies. Honored delegates, Morthok began, his voice carrying clearly through the massive chamber. 1 year ago, my people were dying on a collapsing world. We called out to every advanced civilization in the galaxy, begging for help. Every single one of them turned away. The chamber was completely silent. Even the council representatives who sat in a small, isolated section listened intently. One species answered our call, Morthok continued. The species that you, the supposedly advanced races, called savage and primitive, the humans came not because they had to, not because it was profitable, but because it was right. Morthok gestured to the large display behind him, which showed images of thriving colonies, rescue fleets, and species working together in ways the galaxy had never seen before. Today, the Galactic Mutual Aid Compact represents over half the intelligent species in our galaxy. We have ended famines, prevented wars, and rescued entire civilizations from extinction. We have learned to value life over profit, cooperation over domination, and compassion over coldness. The applause was thunderous and lasted for several minutes. When it finally died down, Morthok delivered his final words. The humans taught us that true civilization is not measured by the power to ignore suffering, but by the courage to answer it. They showed us that being savage sometimes means being the only ones brave enough to care. As Jake watched from the observation deck above the assembly hall, he thought about how much had changed since that day when Lisa Chen had first detected a weak distress signal. The galaxy was becoming a different place, one where strength was measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the willingness to help.